Hey. So I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and something came up that I thought would be a really good thing to share. This friend of mine enjoys sex. She is very sexually savvy, has a sense of sexual freedom, and is orgasmic, and sex is an integrated part of who she is. And still, there was a theme that I was noticing as we were talking where she was describing a sense of numbness or a sense of disconnect from throughout her pelvis, her womb, her vulva, her vagina, just a sense of not really being able to feel this part of herself, even though she's orgasmic. And I think this is really important, is that sometimes when we feel pretty sexually vibrant, sexually safe, sexually connected to ourselves, that there can still be this sense of a larger disconnect or numbness within our bodies. And as I was speaking to her, and there's nothing wrong with that, this is just a process. I think living in our modern world, there's a lot of places and reasons that we shut down, and so the practices that I started to give her are just the beginning of a journey to integrating more of herself. And so the practices that I'll share in this video with you are really valid and powerful for someone who maybe is feeling completely disconnected from yourself sexually, completely disconnected from a sense of like sexual power, sexual freedom, relaxation with your sexual self that just maybe doesn't feel at all like it's a part of your world or your life, all the way through to someone who, like my friend, is maybe very much enjoys sex and yet still feels this sense of numbness. Even if you enjoy sex and you are not aware of a sense of numbness, these practices are still things that I do for myself and I find to be really incredibly powerful. And I think the next important question is, well, why? Why invest in addressing if there is a feeling of numbness? Why create more of a deeper connection or a deeper sensitivity or a deeper awareness of this part of our body? And I think that that's really personal for each individual. But at the same time, I think just so that you might know why you would want to engage with this is, as we reconnect with parts of ourselves that we may have left behind because for whatever reason it wasn't safe, or we didn't have the tools, or we didn't even have the awareness that we wanted to feel alive in those parts of our body, it's like there's pieces of ourselves that we just haven't met yet, we haven't come in contact with, we haven't come to have a relationship with. And the more parts of ourselves that we bring into vitality and that we begin to have a relationship with, the more whole we can feel. The more whole we feel, particularly through, and this is for anyone of any gender. I'm speaking of a friend who's female, but this is these practices that I'll share, these are across all genders as an exploration that can be really powerful. And so there's lots of reasons why we may be feeling some level of disconnect, and coming into connection with these parts of ourselves, it allows ourselves to develop a more holistic relationship with our whole body and with our whole being. And one of the things that brings, if we're speaking specifically about sex and sexuality, is a potential for more pleasure. Another thing that brings is a potential for more sensitivity. And not only sensitivity as in we can feel more when we engage with our genitals, which definitely will be a part of it. And then there's this next layer that I find really exciting, which is that my genitals can become even more sensitive to whatever part of my lover's body they're connecting with. So I can, in a sense, be so sensitive in my genitals that I can almost hear my partner's body or my partner's genitals as we're close to one another, speaking to me about what might support them in going deeper, and therefore what might support both of us together in deepening. And when that starts to happen, and when we can both be that alive in our whole selves, including these parts of the body that we've historically been really deeply cut off from, that really starts to change intimacy and lovemaking. And yeah, so the practice is just so simple, and it's in a couple of layers. So I think this will be a part 1, and then there'll be part 2 where I'll share the next step after you've practiced this for a little while. But all you're gonna do is just put one hand resting over your genitals. And when you do this, you want your genitals to be in a relaxed state, not necessarily in an aroused state at all. And so you have one hand resting over your genitals and one hand resting over your heart. And as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter which hand is where. And the first thing you're gonna do is just take a few breaths and see if you can feel the warmth of your hand that's resting on your genitals, and just feel that. And what we're doing here is we are allowing the possibility that where we may have created an invisible barrier, where we've created that numbness because maybe the fullness of the power that exists in the pelvis felt like too much for us. Maybe there's trauma that's felt like too much for us. And this is such a gentle practice that whatever is waiting there for you, I really feel that as you do this practice on your own, you'll be able to, the practice will go as gently as your body needs it to. That has been my experience. And so with just the warmth of your hand resting over the genitals, there's this potential for some of the vitality, the energy, the blood flow to naturally start just gently like inhabiting that part of the body more, where it hasn't felt safe, where there's been some kind of holding. And it's this very gentle invitation. Yeah, almost like, a friend who's just waiting outside your door until you're ready to come to greet them. That maybe they know you've gone through a hard time, or they're just like, I'm here. And that's what that hand is to your genitals. Whether you have internal genitals, whether you have external genitals, this is the same practice. It's just resting that hand and taking natural breaths. You can do this lying down, you can do it sitting up. I like to do it after, maybe an evening routine where I've showered, my day is complete, and then I do this maybe before bed. You don't have to though, you can add it in anywhere. And allowing that part of the body to sort of find some comfort and safety and homecoming back into itself. And if we think about it, one of the, it's such a simple practice. And I know it could be so simple that it could even be easy to dismiss as what could that possibly give me? And of course, repetition is going to be a part of it. Doing this for a couple minutes, several times a week, as you just begin to allow for the possibility that you could connect more deeply with your body in this way. And I think, when we're relating to the genitals, there are so many ways that we have never encountered our genitals. And what I mean by that is, like, when was the last time you or a partner rested a hand on your genitals with no intention for anything to happen, with no need for arousal to come and the next step to happen, with just a sense of tenderness, care, gentleness, love, acceptance? And if we have never approached our own body and our own genitals with that sense of care, think about how much more of ourselves might come forward when we are treated with that kind of care. Just like in all other aspects of relationship. If someone is allowing me the space to feel deeply cared for and loved just as I am, without having to perform, without having to work for bringing certain aspects of myself forward, with just like by being, I am enough, I am okay. There's just a whole other tenderness that can open, and there's so much more space and potential for intimacy. And the same goes for when we address and connect to our own bodies in this way, we begin a process not only of sensitizing the genitals so we can have more pleasure when we encounter another person, when we're having a sexy time, but also just because, like, we are deserving of that level of connection with ourselves. There's so much that we haven't yet felt of ourselves inside our whole bodies, of our wholeness, of some of our innate, the word I want to use is power, but it's such a sort of tainted word, but such a fullness of our humanity, a fullness of our being, that and also just a tenderness of being deeply cared for. So I hope you give it a try. I would love to hear how it goes, and you can always email at open@charumorgan.com. Thank you.